up, everyone? Welcome back to the Charter Podcast, brought to you by St. Xavier University. I'm Ruthie Polinsky, back with Alex Shapiro and 𝗂𝗂 as we are taping this podcast on Thursday, April 10th. And we have a lot to get to, fellas. But before we do, checking in. How we feeling? Everyone good?
It's Masters Thursday. It's Masters weekend. It's incredible.
And
Passover. One of my favorites. And Passover. My favorite Jewish holiday. One of my favorite sports weekends. Vibes are off the charts right now.
Vibes are high. Clay?
I'm not much of a golf guy, so not going to really watch much Masters. But a lot of Bears news. We had the pressers. We had, the big visit with Shamar Stewart got leaked. A lot of Bears fans aren't happy about that. We're getting closer to the draft. So, it's getting exciting.
You never picked up golf? Like, you don't play at all?
I don't. I'm decent when I play, but I never play. Like on a summer day, people are like, I just want to be in the golf course. I'm like, get me outside next to the lake on a run or a bike ride. I don't want to spend my whole Saturday at a golf course. I'm sorry.
Interesting.
Well, if you play with me, you'll be by the water all the time too. I'm at the beach in the sand. I'm by the water.
This guy spends more time in the sand than David Hasselhoff.
Wait, Alex, that was great. That's really funny. Clay, I feel like you're not playing with the right people. You should play with us, and then we'll
charter group outing for
charter
golf.
Group outing. Would love it.
We'll get David Hall to come too.
Yeah, David Hall, love it. Anyways, happy Masters weekend, happy Passover to all who celebrate. Let's talk about the Chicago Bears, because we got to hear from the players on, Wednesday and Tuesday. It was Tuesday. I'm losing my days of the week, but really interesting stuff. And guys, it kind of feels like back to school, like 2025 underway. Of course, you still have the draft. This roster is not anywhere close to being complete at this point, but really kind of great vibes, obviously, out of Halas Hall when you're 0-0 and you got a new head coach and it's rainbows and sunshine and everyone's happy just to be back in the building. Great to see guys there like Jaylen Johnson. You always wonder if some of those older experienced vets are going to show up. Great to see Jaylen Johnson there in the building. It felt like everyone wanted to get in front of Ben Johnson, in front of this new coaching staff, and make a good first impression.
Yeah, absolutely. Just speaking with Jaylen Johnson, he's a guy who has historically, not gone to OTAs or some of the voluntary stuff because he really values spending time with his daughter in Fresno, which I completely understand. A guy like Jaylen Johnson, one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, especially in the past, very familiar with the defense. Let's be honest, he probably didn't need to be at OTAs in the past. I never thought it was a huge deal, right? Like, he's working on his own. He's doing rehab on his own. He's always been just fine. But it just shows how important it is to these guys to be there for the new head coach, to make that impression, to get everybody together and get this thing rolling early. I think that speaks a lot to the leadership of guys like Tremaine Edmunds, guys like Jaylen Johnson, the guys who are showing up. And then also this buy-in that, okay, fresh start, clean slate. Let's all be here. We're all in this together. Let's all start pulling that same rope. So great to see so many of the top dudes back at Halas Hall.
Absolutely. Just reiterate that. You love to see the attendance and see the vets like Jaylen and everybody there. And I know we're going to get into a lot of what was said from each of these players. And I think there's a lot of interesting takes and stuff we can get out of their conversations that they had with the media, talking about Ben and what went on at Halas. And obviously we're still in phase one. And this is the phase where you're just working out. You get to do the classroom stuff. You get to learn, but it's an important phase. And you got to remember, Caleb in Rome has never even been through this phase before. This is the phase where you're talking about a guy like Ben Johnson. You want to build from the ground up, set the foundation. This is the phase that sets the foundation with everything. Obviously, we like to talk about the offense with Ben coming in with Caleb, but for the whole team.
Yeah, and I think we'll stick right there with before we get into Caleb, when we were talking about Jaylen Johnson, I thought his comments were really profound and powerful. Obviously, he kind of shed a little light into what Ben Johnson's messaging was to the team in that first team meeting, which we were all talking about on Monday. What's the message going to be? What's the message going to be? I think to hear this sort of message of would you rather win by 7 or 70? It's like, whoa, like what did Ben Johnson say in that meeting, right? Like, what is the message in terms of we're not just trying to win now. We're trying to blow teams out of the water, if that's really kind of what the messaging was. I think that is absolutely fascinating. It's infusing confidence into the room, right? And I think that was sort of my biggest takeaway from everything Jaylen Johnson had to say. Of course, his tempering of the expectations is also something I think we should get into, but also just to hear sort of this, dare I use the word, aura, that Ben Johnson has that is really sort of penetrating throughout the entire building.
I want to start with that, Ruthie. The Ben Johnson, obviously hearing that from Jaylen, would you rather win by 7 or 70? Kind of getting out of that's what maybe Ben was saying in this meeting. If Matt Eberflus walks in this year, he's a coach still, and he says that, it falls on deaf ears. But when a guy like Ben Johnson, with Ben Johnson's pedigree, with a top offense the last 3-4 years in the NFL, the numbers he's put up, he has been blowing out teams. He has been lighting up that scoreboard. That scoreboard's working hard when Ben Johnson's calling plays. Having a guy that not only is saying this, but has the results. Players look at coaches and even players with, what have you done? What are your results? Other coaches won't be able to come in and say that. Ben Johnson comes in and says that after his success in Detroit, almost made the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Last year, obviously, defensively, they had a struggle. His offense wasn't the problem. They didn't make it. The defense was. 3 years ago, obviously, playoffs again as well. When Ben Johnson comes in with that attitude, it does reflect down to the players. You feel that confidence. You feel that aura. I'm using that word too, because he has done it, and he is a guy that has that success. So you trust it more, and you follow that. So if Eberflus came in and saying, hey, guys, I know last couple years we struggled, but we're going to beat teams by 70 this year. Okay, I'm sitting there a little bit looking around, the guys scratching their heads. Ben Johnson says it hits different.
I think it's also just a changing of the standard. And when I mean standard, just like truly what the Bears are after. We got a sense of this, a glimpse of this at the owners' meeting when Ben Johnson isn't talking about takeaways and taking care of the ball. He's talking about EPA, expected points added, per play. It's a shift. It's a shift there, right? I don't think Matt Eberflus came in there and would ever say, we're going to blow teams out by 70. Matt Eberflus is coming in and he's talking about hits. He's talking about doing things the right way. He's talking about measuring hustle, measuring intensity. That's all fine and good. That was his program. That's what his foundation was. I'm going to measure. We're going to do loafs, and we're going to hustle to the ball, and we're going to take care of the ball. Those days are over. Those days are over. It's going to be let it rip. I think there's going to be a lot less focus on taking care of the football, which was such a huge, huge thing. Sometimes you're going to throw some interceptions if you're looking to make big plays and score 70 points. And I think it's just more of a glimpse into the shifting of standards, the shifting of priorities. This is the new world that Ben Johnson is creating. It's a new mindset. We are going to dominate teams, not just run to the ball real fast.
And just real quick, Alex, just because you said some really good stuff there. You look at the EPA stuff and the turnover stuff. Jared Goff had double the amount of interceptions as Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams' EPA per play last year had him ranked as 30th best in the NFL. Jared Goff was in the top 5. Okay, Ben Johnson isn't bringing this stuff out of nowhere. There's been research. This is analytical. This is a new age football. I came up in the don't turn the ball over. You got to hustle. No loafs. That's the stuff that I grew up in too. But he is looking at this a different way. And once again, you look at a guy, you look at his past, you look at his success. This is something that's worked.
And this is kind of an interesting balance too, right, Clay? Because you want to make sure you're emphasizing to your defense. We still want to create turnovers and take the ball away and hit quarterbacks and do everything that we have taught you to do for your entire football career. That's still important. However, from an offensive perspective, we want to make sure that we're focusing on the right things for, the playmakers and Caleb, of course. So I think it's sort of this like interesting balance where you don't want to tell your defensive players, hey, what you're doing and like taking them all away, it doesn't really matter as much. We care more about what our offense is doing, right? Like, how do you balance that, Clay? Like, what would your perception be if a coach got up there and said, yeah, we don't really, we're prioritizing something else now?
Well, I think you got a coach like Dennis Allen in there for a reason. I think Ben Johnson, once again, made a great hire when you have Dennis Allen in there as your defensive coordinator, because he's a guy that when you get in those defensive meetings, I don't care what Ben's saying, Dennis Allen is the head coach of that defense, and you're going to be listening to him. And Dennis Allen, he may come off as a little bit quieter of a guy, not the big. He's going to hold you accountable, and he is going to preach the turnovers. The turnovers obviously still matter. A lot of this stuff still matters. And you got veterans on this team like TJ Edwards, like Tremaine Edmunds, guys that know how important it is to get the ball. Grady Jarrett obviously coming over. Obviously, Jaylen Johnson going to have a new opportunity in a different style defense. I'm sure we're going to get to that, how they're going to be playing more man-to-man. There's going to be more blitzes, going to be more aggressive. So I think having Dennis Allen on that defensive side of the ball, he's going to keep those guys in line with hey, we're forcing turnovers. We're stopping the run. That's the number one thing I think that they need to work on, is stopping the run. They weren't great on that. I'll have some stats for you later, Ruthie. I know you love when I pull out the stats.
Love your stats.
I think Dennis Allen will keep them in line, making sure that they're taking care of the turnover situation.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting conversation. And I think, honestly, when you think about the priority of 2025, what is the number one priority of 2025 when you're looking at improvement when it comes to the Chicago Bears? I'll quickly ask each of you and see if we all match. Number one priority.
Getting Caleb Williams playing MVP ball.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's it. I mean, it's that easy. I think when Caleb Williams is playing at that caliber, this team is going to have a lot of success because of the coach, because of the system, because of I know you probably want to see more pieces on the defense, more talent arguably on the defense, but what you have there is enough to be successful. We saw Matt Eberflus do it, right? So if Matt Eberflus can do it, you imagine that other people are going to be able to pick up, some of those strengths. So I'm just, I think from a head coach messaging standpoint, you got to just get in Caleb's head, make sure Caleb's thinking the right way, and everything else will come, right? That's sort of how it feels in my book. You talked about, since we're on sort of the Jaylen Johnson to start this thing off, he talked about playing more man-to-man in Dennis Allen's system. Obviously, the trajectory of his career really took off when he was playing zone and was labeled as one of the best corners in the league. Now he's going to be traveling and following the number one wide receiver every game. And it was fun on the Big Pro Football Show, Clay. We put up some of those names that he's going to be traveling with in 2025. And that is not a small list of talented wide receivers that Jaylen Johnson will be going up against. So what is your perception of Jaylen's comments and his excitement about getting to do that?
I love the fact that he's taking that challenge head on. And, we've talked about this, and this is a stat I talked about yesterday. So this is something that I think we need to clarify firstly. On pass plays from 2000 to 2024, the Saints played man coverage at the 5th highest rate in the league between those 4 or 5 years. That's 32.5%. That same time frame on pass plays, the Bears played man-to-man on a 15.7%. So there's 20% there. You're over double the amount of man-to-man, but you're still only playing it 1/3 of the time. But in a lot of crucial situations and a lot of big third downs, you're going to have a lot of man-to-man coverage, and that's going to put a lot of strain on that cornerback. That's why when we're talking about a surprise draft pick, I wouldn't be shocked to see one of those first 3 picks be a cornerback, just because this is a different system. This is a different scheme. When Dennis Allen is telling Ryan Poles what he needs, what he wants, he's going to say, I want a guy that can lock up somebody man-to-man, not a Tyreek Stevenson that's great in zone and can tackle and stuff. I need a guy that's going to lock up someone man-to-man. But with Jaylen Johnson, I think he's going to have to prove that he's a top corner this year. There's no hiding it. Yes, there's one thing that could save him. Dennis Allen is more aggressive. He blitzes more. He likes to do more stunts. He does things to get more pressure on the quarterback instead of sitting back in the 2 shell. So hypothetically, you should get more pressure on the quarterback so you won't have to cover as long, and that should create more turnover opportunities. But this is a big year for Jaylen, and Jaylen wasn't the same last year as he was the year before. You look back, Jaylen Johnson last season averaged a massive 9.2 yards per target. In 2023, he averaged 4.8 yards per target. So he had a solid year still. We still love Jaylen, but he took a little bit of step back. And now he's going to have a lot of emphasis on what he can do because it's Dennis Allen's scheme. You look at the Marshawn Lattimore. When I was in New Orleans Saints, that was a draft pick. They draft Marshawn Lattimore as a guy that was great in man-to-man coverage. So Jaylen is going to have his work cut out for him. I think he's up for it, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see another addition in this draft either.
Yeah. We've seen Jaylen Johnson go toe-to-toe with some guys in the past too. They haven't necessarily had him travel so much, but we've seen him exchange blows with Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown. Has he been the perfect lockdown island corner? No. I mean, he's definitely lost some reps to some of those guys, but you're talking about the best wide receivers in the NFL. Everybody's going to lose some reps to those guys. But he's gone toe-to-toe with the top talent in the past. I do think that he's up for it. And this is a guy who always in the locker room, whenever we ask him about whatever matchup is coming up, he is always so excited about every snap he takes against the top wide receiver. This is why Jaylen Johnson plays football. You know, it's like it's to compete against the best and to play against the best.
Yeah, it's going to be so fascinating to really see how Jaylen adjusts. And obviously he wants the heat. Like, he wants the attention. It was this time last year. Well, not really this time, but a little bit in a couple months. It was this time last year that he was really upset that he didn't make the top 100 list. So here you go, Jaylen. You want to put the league on notice. You know, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to do that. So it's going to be exciting. And then, guys, the other thing that was so interesting with Jaylen Johnson's messaging that, yes, we want to win by 70, but also I'm not really buying into this hype. He goes, he was sort of gave you this vibe of, I've been here before. Last year it was the new quarterback. The year before it was, the new coordinator. There are all these new things that are popping in. And I just think Jaylen was very much tempering expectations. And I think it can be taken two ways. We were talking on the Big Pro Football Show, Clay, with David Hall, our co-host, and he was very much like, come on, you're a leader. Like, get excited. We want you to be that guy. Whereas I sort of took it more as, you need to have someone who's making sure everyone knows we haven't won anything yet. We still got to put in the work. The coach is great. We're all excited about Ben Johnson being here and Caleb taking a jump, but we all have to get on the grass and prove that we can do it. So I'm curious to get your two takes on sort of Jaylen's cool, calm, collected, as he always is, but his sort of demeanor when it comes to the expectations around this team.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, just to underline that, that's just who he is, how he always is. He's never going to be someone who's going to be, reading the headlines and saying, okay, we're the offseason champs, we got to feel good. That's, again, he's always been a gotta prove it type guy. And I think, like, deservedly so. The Bears have kind of been clowned for being the offseason champs now 3 years in a row. And I think there's a grain of reality to that. You need your leaders, and we're going to touch on this later, I'm sure, with Tremaine Edmunds. You need your leaders to be lifting people up and good vibes and all of that. That's really important, right? But I think it's also important to have other leaders saying, no, we got to prove it. We got to put in the work. Now's the time. Nobody hands out wins in the NFL in April. Nobody hands out wins in May, June, July, and August. We're going to continue to go down this. When training camp looks great, we're going to do this over and over and over again. And the Bears, to his point, have done this over and over again. As you said, the DJ Moore trade. Oh, my God, it's happening. The Caleb Williams trade. Oh, my God, it's happening. Ben Johnson. Oh, my God, it's happening. No, at a certain point, the Bears got to do it. So I think it is important to have both voices in that locker room.
I mean, that's a good point, Alex. So I got two kind of fields of thought on this one. Like, I get where Jaylen's coming from. Like, let's think about this. Jaylen is entering his 6th NFL season. He's on his 4th head coach and his 5th defensive coordinator. So he's been through a lot. Okay, Jaylen and 𝗂𝗏𝗏, only 2 guys still on the roster from that 2020 team. They're now the longest tenured Bears players, and they've never won more than 8 games in a single season. So I understand where he's coming from. He's saying, hey, let's temper our expectations here. But on the flip side of that, if you're in the locker room, right, you're a veteran leader, and there's this excitement, Ben Johnson coming in, obviously you're excited, and you're kind of maybe dampening some of that excitement. I don't think that's the right thing to do, and saying, hey, whatever, we'll see what happens. But if you're the guy that's saying, hey, it's cool to be excited, but the work is going to start next week or in a few weeks when we're on the field in these OTAs, when we're getting to phase 2, phase 3, the work is going to start in training camp. The work is going to start in preseason. That's when we make our mark. That is when the work gets done. And I think that's more of what Jaylen's going to do. He may look like he's kind of dampening this excitement with Ben and Caleb and all these new signings. But what I think he's going to do is he's going to be a guy that says, hey, I don't want to talk about this. We're not excited. I've been excited before. We need to work, and the work is going to be what pays off and what gets us wins.
It's really fascinating. And I think on the other end of the spectrum, we sort of did hear the leader of Tremaine Edmunds come to the podium and say, Ben got in front of the room, and this guy has got it. He was captivating. He exuded confidence into the room, and you sort of got that, okay, maybe some of these guys are actually kind of excited, after we heard from Jaylen, who spoke first, I believe, to then go to Tremaine, who was like, no, we're pumped. It was kind of like a refreshing sort of side by side. And like you said, you got to have both of those guys in the locker room.
I'll be Jaylen Johnson right now again. Do you know who else had aura? Do you know who else was the real deal and had the right stuff? Thomas Brown. And what happened when Thomas Brown took over that team? And I'm not putting all of this on Thomas Brown. He was running Shane Waldron's offense. Things were already falling apart. But that team really fell apart after 𝗪𝗛ce got fired. I'm not saying that 𝗪𝗛ce should have stuck around. Like what happened in that Detroit game, the Bears need to part ways. But again, to echo Jaylen Johnson, been there, done that, heard a lot of the same stuff, and things got worse. Things got worse. Another dude who aura, baby.
I understand it. I get it. Because, everything I just said about him dealing with that. But I do think this is different because you're dealing with a guy, Ben Johnson, who just worked his way up, became this stud offensive coordinator with his own offense, created it all on his own. This isn't some offense. He's not running the McVay. He's running the Ben Johnson. Okay, this is his offense. And he's a guy that came into an organization that was struggling, a struggling organization, a struggling offense. And he was on the ground floor when he turned that around. And people say, look who he had on his team when he turned it around. They have so many players. Let's think about this. In 2020, without Gibbs, without Montgomery, without Laporta, without Jameson Williams, Ben Johnson was 5th in points per game, 4th in yards per game, 4th in yards per play, 5th in touchdowns per play, 6th in first downs per play, and 6th in EPA per play. That's without all those big name guys. And this guy started from the ground floor, and that's what he did his first year without those players. So for me, when I see a guy, I'm a player, when he has that resume, I am excited, and especially when he can do that in front of the room and when he knows how to kind of speak to the players and he isn't just this analytical guy that's going to be in his playbook and tell you what to do. I'm excited. So for me, when I look at those results, and that's what NFL players look, it's more of what have you done? What are you going to do? Do you got some skins on the wall? This guy's got a wall full of skins already, and I'm excited that he's in Chicago and he's going to get us some skins because we need some skins.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Clay. It's completely different from the Thomas Brown situation. I wasn't suggesting that they were comparable because you are absolutely right. They're very different situations. And Ben Johnson does have a hell of a resume. So yeah, I feel you.
Yeah. And on the other side of things, Caleb Williams also talked about Ben Johnson's charm, charisma, intensity, all the things that I think fans are really buying into right now as well, to talk about the pop quiz that has been heard around the world, right? So Ben Johnson flings the door open. Caleb does the whole dramatic arm movement to tell the world how Ben made a dramatic entrance into the room and threw a pop quiz at the quarterback room the other day. And they went over the things that they had learned the day before. Obviously, the drama there is cute. It's charming, right? Like we like the storytelling, Caleb. It makes our jobs really fun because we like a fun press conference. But I think what really should be taken away from it was that Ben Johnson ain't messing around. There are already pop quizzes. We're already getting drilled and making sure that we're going home and we're studying and we're learning things that were taught the day before. So I think my biggest question coming out of that story of the drama was, well, Caleb, did you get the question right? That was, I wanted to know. That's the biggest question mark of 2025. Will Caleb Williams have the right answers to the test? And that, I think, is where I stand on the dramatics of, like, yeah, the story's cute. Ben Johnson comes in, pop quiz, day one, pop, pop, pop. And it's cute. But will you be able to handle that when it's October, November, December, or when you start the year 2-4? How are things looking when things are tough? So I think that's sort of the biggest answer to the test. And Clay, I can see you chomping at the bit to chime in here, but I also want to make sure that we talk about the 𝗵𝗻𝗶𝗹 comments on.
That's what I was going to say. No, I was just going to say, it's funny how you get that from Caleb, the pop quiz, and then 𝗵𝗻𝗻𝗶𝗹 talking about how hard and difficult it's going to be with Ben Johnson. To me, this isn't just some random occurrence. I think 𝗵𝗻𝗻𝗶𝗹 might have got that from somewhere. And Ben Johnson, to me, this shows that he's going to hold him to a standard. He's going to make sure that Caleb Williams knows when you go home, I know it's the first day of work. Guess what? I want to know that you went home, you studied this playbook, and you comprehended what I told you. You're not going home, okay, we're done for the day, relax. It was phase one. No, Ben Johnson holds himself to a standard. He holds his quarterback to a standard. Do you think Jared Goff got that much better because just Ben Johnson came in? No, Ben Johnson held him to a specific standard. And to me, that is Ben, firstly, checking on Caleb, making sure he is a guy that's going to do the work, and letting Caleb know at any time, I'm going to make sure that you're getting your stuff in. And then on the flip side of that, another thing is, I think that's Ben seeing how much Caleb can handle. And he's going to keep doing this. How much can I give this guy? How much of this offense can I put in? And he is going to know what he's doing. So he's kind of doing a feeler here. So this is something that's going to keep going on. I think it's important to have a coach that is going to hold you accountable every single day. Okay, pop quiz. What did we talk about yesterday? When we were sitting down in that meeting, did you take your notes? Did you go home and study your notes? And then did you write everything out again to come back? Because quarterbacks, I'm sorry, some positions, if you're a defensive tackle, you might not have to go home and study the stunt that you just learned from, from Dennis Allen. Quarterback, different life. I mean, it's going to be hard. So I thought that was intriguing as well. And I definitely want to hear what you thought, Alex, about that 𝗵𝗻𝗶𝗹 and the Caleb Williams pop quiz.
Yeah. Well, I'll just, I guess, co-sign everything you said. I think you nailed it. And same with you, Ruthie, about it also being a message to the quarterbacks. Like, hey, welcome to your new reality. You got to be ready to have the answers. But I think this is also where the importance of the relationship between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams also becomes very clear. People talk a lot about the relationship between head coach and quarterback, and that's got to be solid. Caleb Williams even alluded to it the other day with his relationship with Lincoln Riley, right? And how close the two of them were at Oklahoma and at USC. That relationship, that trust, the personal bond that they build is going to be so important, because when Ben Johnson challenges Caleb Williams needs to know it's coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of, we are on this thing together. And like, there can be some constructive, what's the word I'm looking for? Confrontation, right? Not all confrontation is bad confrontation. There are going to be times when Caleb Williams, I'm sure, is going to have words for Ben Johnson. We've seen this with the Chiefs. I mean, it gets a ton of publicity. Travis Kelce button heads with Andy Reid. We see it all the time. That is able to work because of the relationship that they've built. So that's going to be so huge, especially early on. Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, building that strong trust, building that strong relationship, so that when, you know, he's got to be calling them out, when he's holding them accountable, when they're butting heads a little bit, it's okay, because they have that foundation. They know, hey, we're good.
I will say, as long as it's getting the best out of Caleb, Travis Kelce can go yell at Andy Reid because they're both going in the Hall of Fame. Caleb Williams is a second-year quarterback who knows nothing. Relatively speaking, like, there's so much for him to learn and experience and go through that only time will allow for him. And I'm not saying that, you know, obviously I feel like sometimes I come off as like sort of hard on Caleb on our show, but I think this kid has such a bright, incredible future ahead of him. I just want him to be coached in the right way that gets the most out of him. And I think Ben is going to be very, very, very hard on him. And it's going to be the exact opposite of what we saw last year, because Ben Johnson says, let's get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think last year the organization did everything in their power to keep Caleb comfortable.
And I'll say this. Oh, yeah. Sorry, continue.
No, that was it.
No, absolutely right. And there's a balance, but you got to hold this guy accountable. I remember being shook when I talk about New England all the time, but being in a meeting and, you know, Bill will call out certain players and plays with whatever game or practice. Tom Brady, okay, our quarterback right here, completely misses the read. I don't know what he's looking at. His eyes are bad. His feet look, and I'm just like, this is Tom Brady we're talking about, and he's holding him accountable. Same thing with Drew Brees and Sean Payton. Great friends, love each other. And he's going down the list of plays that weren't good. And then our quarterback right here, I obviously don't know what he's thinking. He should have took the dig. For some reason, he threw the flat. And these are Hall of Fame best players in history. They're holding accountable. So that accountability, don't care if you're the first overall pick. These guys, nobody's untouchable. And that's how you got to coach these guys. And that kind of trickles down your roster. When you know they're willing to call out Tom in the middle of the meeting, they're calling out Drew Brees in the middle of the meeting, when you get called out, you're much more receptive to it. They're not picking on you. They're calling out everybody.
But I imagine Bill Belichick and Tom Brady have an unbelievable relationship. I imagine Sean Payton and Drew Brees have an unbelievable relationship, right? I mean, right? There's that trust. There's that foundation there. So big summer from like every aspect you look at of these two guys building something. Because yeah, you're right. Like Travis Kelce and Andy Reid are going to be Hall of Famers. But if things go right, if things go according to plan, this should hopefully be a relationship that lasts between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams for a decade, right? That is the plan. And it's time to set that foundation of all of this stuff.
100%. It's a coach holding a player accountable and the player willing to take that and receive it and get better from it versus reject it. Like that's, I think, or shut down from it. And I think we all saw Caleb's body language sort of shift halfway through the year last year when probably he lost a little bit of belief in the coaching staff, which I'm not saying that was the right or wrong thing to do. But at the same time, when you're a rookie quarterback, if you're the number one overall pick, if you're Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, like you have to be able to take coaching from your coach because he's your coach. And if it's Ben Johnson, if it's 𝗵𝗶𝗶, you just want to see sort of the demeanor of, and Caleb was incredibly professional answering questions and facing the media, but you just wonder, you know, how will he be when you don't have the excuse of, your coach isn't getting fired. You don't have the of your coaches getting fired soon. You don't have the excuse of you don't have an offensive you have an offensive line. You have a Hall of Fame left guard. You have a brand new center who's the second highest paid center in the league. Like, you have pieces around you now. You have DJ Moore. You have Rome Odunze. They beefed up the defense. Like, Caleb has almost more pressure on him now because there are no excuses. You have the coach. You have the pieces. So will he be able to handle that pressure in addition to a coaching staff that seemingly is going to be really hard on him? It's only time will tell. And I think if he can handle it, the sky is the limit for this team, for the quarterback, for all the things. I really just went off on a tangent there. I just had a lot to get off my chest, clearly.
That's good stuff. This has been good, guys.
Fired up. We also heard from Tremaine Edmunds, who we talked about a little bit. We heard from Darnell Wright. Let's make sure we get to him, because obviously Darnell is, Alex, you and I know, not always the go-to guy in the locker room. A little quieter, doesn't have, a little nervous around the media, I think. It was kind of cool to see him. It felt like he had grown up a little bit a couple of days ago. Did you feel that way?
It's funny. I thought he was still the shy guy at the podium, but he did crack a few jokes. He cracked a few jokes, showed a little personality. We've seen his personality before. So yeah, no, when he got up there, he warmed up. I think he warmed up. It was probably, first time at the podium in many, many months. So I saw that shyness, but then we did see the personality kind of peek through towards the end.
Yeah. So obviously the headliner from Darnell Wright was that someone asked him if he can throw a football, and he said, I'll probably just take off and run. Obviously, we know Ben Johnson likes to get creative, and who knows what those conversations are like behind closed doors. But it was cool to see Darnell Wright, obviously someone who's going to get a lot better from the additions on the offensive line as well.
And you've heard obviously the 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗨, and that's tough when you're getting compared from anybody. But you think about it, Ben Johnson said he saw similarities in Darnell and 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗨. And then also Jonah Jackson, a guy that played next to 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗨. Actually, he played left guard in Detroit, who played on the same offensive line with 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗨, says that he sees some similarities with 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗨. And I think Darnell Wright is as important as anybody not named Caleb Williams to this team. Can he become this dominant right tackle that the Bears need? Jonah Jackson being next to him, and obviously we've talked about his injury risk there, playing in only 29 of his last 51 games, a little bit concerning. But when you got a center like Drew Dalman, then you got Jonah Jackson, who is a guy, a mauler. He's a guy that can get after people. He has that demeanor. And the same thing with Darnell Wright. The thing I love about Darnell Wright, he's that guy, he's on the podium. He looks shy. He's soft-spoken. Put on his game film. He is going after guys. He is finishing plays. He is a big physical man, and he's going to keep getting better, especially under Dan Rochar. Dan Rochar has coached a number of offensive linemen. I remember when he had Teron Armstead when I was in New Orleans. We had just drafted Ryan Ramczyk. We had a lot of guys, Andrus Peat, and these guys were developed by Dan Rochar, and I think he's one of the best in the game. And I'm excited to see what this consistency will bring, because I will say, as a player, you are only as good as the guy blocking next to you, and it's more so for an offensive lineman. At tight end, when you're doing a double team with an offensive tackle, you got to know your offensive tackle. You're so confident when you are confident this guy's going to take the right steps. He knows exactly what he's doing. You guys have put in the work together. There's this consistency that you guys have built. You know exactly where he's going to be. You know exactly what he's seeing when there's a guy that's twisting around. Is he on the same level as you, or is he off the level? Now you're worried that you got to maybe take the guy that's twisting instead of maybe sitting back and letting the twister come to you. So there's a lot of things that are going to improve his game this year, and especially, hopefully, the consistency of having a high-level right guard next to him. And obviously Cole is a guy that can block, and they've had some good blocks together. But that whole right side of the line, and the left too, once we figure out left tackle, we're not going there right now, but that's a thing. But I think that will help him improve greatly, having that guy next to him.
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it. It's very interesting. He brought up the consistency when somebody asked, what do you think about the free agent moves? And he basically just said, all I've really wanted is consistency. So it is huge. I mean, how many right guards played next to him?
Nate Davis.
Nate Davis, Ryan Bates. Did Bill Murray play some right guard?
Love Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, he's back. We got to talk about the contract for Bill Murray. He's back. That's tough, as you just said. So having the consistency is huge. And then I also think it was cool that multiple people have compared him to 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗨, which is probably an unfair thing to do because 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗨 is arguably the best right tackle in the league. But he said, you know what? Honestly, that means a lot to me to be compared to a guy like that. And to be honest, I watch a lot of his tape and I try and take some things out of his game and put it in my game. So it's kind of cool to hear that because I've tried to emulate him a little bit. Obviously he can't do everything 𝗵𝗍 𝗠𝗨 does, but he's I could do that. I'll put that in my game. So, I mean, this is a big year. This is a big opportunity. This is a guy who, when you spend a top 10 pick on a right tackle, not a left tackle, a right tackle, I think the expectation is that he plays at a Pro Bowl, if not all pro level. So we've talked about how this is a huge, huge year for Caleb Williams. Huge year for Darnell Wright as well, with Jonah Jackson, who hopefully last 17 games next to him, with Dan Rochar, who is an incredible offensive line coach, who has helped many, many players maximize their potential. Big opportunity for Darnell Wright.
It's going to be great, fellas. Great stuff this week. Any weekend plans, Clay?
Yeah, I'm going back to the homeland of Ruthie Polinsky, St. Louis. My nephew has a soccer game. Me, my dad, my brother, and my nephew, we're all taking a guy's trip down to St. Louis and be in the car with those guys for a long time, man. It's going to be interesting.
Fun.
But looking forward to going to St. Louis. You're going to have to send me some recommendations, Ruthie.
Yep.
And it's my weekend.
Stop at ‌WALLY's on the way there. Love ʻWALLY's.
Oh, the gas station?
Gas station.
Yes.
Love
Right
ʻWALLY's.
Was it in Pontiac?
Pontiac.
Very good.
Pontiac.
All right, so you know ʻWALLY's.
And then
Pontiac is right next to Dwight, Illinois, where I'm from.
Dwight, Illinois. And then yeah, I got a lot of places. Pappy's barbecue, obviously,
right?
iconic. Yeah, Pappy's. A lot of good ones though. Salt and Smoke. I'll get you all set up. And yeah, take a visit to Clayton High School. That's where I went to high school.
That's my name.
Greyhounds. Or the Greyhounds.
My actual name is Clayton, so you went to a great high school.
Yeah. It was so funny. And then hopefully I get a dog here soon, if my husband ever lets me. And I want to name him. I told him I wanted to name him Clayton because of where I grew up, not realizing that Clay's full name was Clayton. So now it's I'm going to have two Clays that I love in my life. Okay.
And Alex, what do you got, Alex? What's your weekend plan before we sign out here?
I already said off
Masters
the
and
top.
Passover.
Yep,
yeah,
Staters and golf and Staters.
Yeah, let's go.
It's going to be great. Same for me. And I'm having my closets installed. So,
wow. Banner weekend for everybody.
Big weekend for me. Can't wait for the Masters. Any Masters picks here? Who you got?
I'm
I
riding
got
with
Tiger
Rory.
Woods.
Oh, you got Tiger?
Clay, got some news for you.
Yeah.
You won't see LT Gray
If
out there.
if I know one single golfer, if I could just don't give me, I could probably pull this off here. You already said Rory.
I already said Rory.
Okay, there's one more guy, Justin Smith. No, is that a guy? No.
Kind of mixing
is
two
Phil
guys.
Mickelson still
Come on.
Phil Mickelson is playing golf.
Playing
He's
lefty?
golf this weekend.
lefty? Who else?
He might not make it to the weekend,
Hey,
but
come on.
he'll certainly be playing Thursday and Friday.
Who
Best
is
golfer in the
number
world.
one golfer in the world?
Oh, Ricky Fowler.
Okay,
Ricky.
not golfer in the world, but
number one in my heart.
Yeah,
Gotta love the
bro.
orange. Not the best.
With the
golfer.
guy that got arrested. The guy that got arrested when he ended up winning the. What was his
Very
name?
good. You tell us.
Starts with an S.
SS.
Scotty Scheffler.
There we go.
Scotty Scheffler. I'm going with Scotty Scheffler.
Okay, love it.
Good pick. Good pick.
If Rory doesn't win it this year, when will he win it? Is my question. Kind of feels like this is his time.
This is his time. He's in form.
Anyway,
Although he's got the wrist. He had the wrist thing.
The wrist.
The wrist.
Did you see his daughter make this like crazy putt? And
Poppy.
I was so cute, Poppy.
Poppy McElroy is my wife's favorite golfer.
Oh, cute. Love that. All right. That's enough golf for this Thursday. Thank you both so much for your time. And thank you to our listeners for listening to us ramble for however long this went, 40 some odd minutes. This is the Charter Podcast brought to you by St. Xavier University. We will see you next time. Have a great Masters weekend and happy Passover, everyone.